I'm going to shot my parents. I think they're all bleeding. They're on the floor. I can't find my sister. Please hurry.
And your parents
Not moving.
have both been shot, have they?
I don't know. There's not a blood everywhere.
Listening to Seth's 911 call, it's easy to feel heartbroken for him. The only survivor, finding his family dead in their own home. But what if things aren't as they seem? What if, by the end of this story, you'll be left wondering if he deserves your sympathy at all? Today we're diving into the tragic case of the Gonzalez family. It's a heartbreaking story with twists you won't see coming. So let's get into it. Teodoro Gonzalez, or Teddy as most people knew him, was born in 1954 in Baguio, a city in the Philippines. He grew up in a big family with 3 older siblings, and life wasn't easy. His parents didn't have much money, so from a young age, Teddy learned the value of hard work. He promised himself that one day, when he had a family of his own, they wouldn't struggle the way he did. Teddy was determined to build a better life, and he did just that. After finishing high school, he went on to college and then to law school. It wasn't easy, but Teddy worked hard and earned his law degree. By 1977, when he was 23, Teddy met someone who would change his life forever, Loiva. Now, Loiva was a special woman. She was kind, gentle, and always looked out for others. As the oldest of 6 children, she had a natural maternal instinct. When she and Teddy met, they instantly clicked. It didn't take long for them to fall in love. They dated for a few months before getting married, and a few years later, their family started to grow. On September 16, 1980, their first child, Seth, was born. Teddy and Loiva were overjoyed. 3 years later, they had their second child, a daughter named Claudine. The family was complete, and things seemed perfect. Teddy was working hard as a lawyer, while Loiva stayed home to care for their children. But Teddy wasn't satisfied with just being a lawyer. He had big dreams. He wanted to make sure his children had everything they needed, and more. So he and Loiva began investing in businesses. They started a video store, opened a pharmacy, and even got into real estate. By 1989, they had saved enough money to build their own hotel. It was a 4-story hotel with 40 rooms, a huge accomplishment for the family. But as life sometimes goes, disaster struck. In 1990, an earthquake hit the area and the hotel collapsed. The Gonzalez family survived, but Seth, their young son, was trapped inside the building. In an act of incredible bravery, Teddy went back into the rubble to rescue his son. He pulled him out, but the whole experience left a mark on the family. They had lost everything they had worked so hard for. With their home and business destroyed, Teddy and Loiva decided it was time for a fresh start. So, they left the Philippines and moved to Australia. They settled in New South Wales, where Teddy opened his own immigration law firm. The firm quickly became successful, and the family was able to buy a beautiful home in a nice suburban area. Life was good again, or so it seemed. As successful as Teddy and Loiva were, they had high expectations for their children. Like many immigrant parents, they wanted Seth and Claudine to be perfect. They expected straight A's in school, involvement in sports, and participation in extracurricular activities. There was no room for mistakes. When Seth or Claudine did well, their parents rewarded them generously. Teddy bought Seth a car. They got the latest clothes and shoes, and they were given allowances so they could focus on their schoolwork. There were even savings set aside for when they graduated from college, but all these rewards came with conditions. Seth and Claudine had to meet their parents' expectations. If they didn't, there were consequences. Their parents would threaten to take away the car, their savings, or even their phones if they didn't perform well in school. Seth, the eldest, had always been seen as the golden child. He attended Parramatta High School and, for most of his early years, was the perfect student. But as he entered his junior year, things started to change. Seth found a passion for music, and he wanted to pursue it full-time. His parents, however, didn't see music as a real career. They pushed him to focus on law or medicine, believing that those careers would secure his future. Seth tried to follow their wishes and enrolled at the University of New South Wales to study medical science, but his heart wasn't in it. Even though Seth was smart, he didn't care about his studies. His mind was always on music. He even joined a band called Definite Vibes, which, while small, had a loyal fan base. One fan in particular, Daisy Diaz, was obsessed with Seth. She ran a fan page for him and would constantly post about him, calling him her best friend. With his attention on music, Seth's grades started to slip. He failed his first semester at college, but instead of telling his parents, he forged his report card. He made it look like he had passed. Seth even bragged to his sister, Claudine, about how he had fooled their parents. Claudine, who was working hard to meet their parents' expectations, was furious. She thought it was unfair that Seth was being rewarded for lying while she was putting in all the effort to do things right. This caused tension between Seth and Claudine. While Claudine was striving for success, Seth was lying his way through college and still getting all the rewards. After 2 years of studying medical science, Seth decided he didn't want to be a doctor. He dropped out and switched to law, enrolling at Macquarie University, where he began working at his father's law firm. Things started to look better for Seth after the switch. His grades improved, and as a reward, his parents bought him a bright blue Toyota with personalized license plates that read Seth G80. But the tension between Seth and Claudine remained. Claudine felt like she was working hard and getting nothing, while Seth was taking shortcuts and getting everything handed to him. Claudine had her own struggles with her parents' high expectations. She had a boyfriend named Charles, but when their parents found out, they were furious. They believed relationships would distract Claudine from her studies. So, to make sure the relationship ended, they sent Claudine to live with an aunt in Melbourne, far away from Charles. Despite the distance, Claudine and Charles kept their relationship going. But Seth found out, and for reasons no one could fully understand, he decided to get involved. Seth told Charles to break up with Claudine, threatening him by saying he was part of a gang, and that if Charles didn't leave Claudine alone, there would be serious consequences. Charles, scared by Seth's threats, broke up with Claudine. Claudine was devastated. She was heartbroken, and she was angry at Seth. She felt like she had always kept Seth's secrets, like when he lied to their parents about his grades. But when it came to her own relationship, Seth interfered. So, Claudine went to their parents and told them everything. She revealed that Seth had been lying about his grades and forging his report cards for years. When their parents found out, they were furious. They also discovered that Seth had a girlfriend, something they were not happy about. They threatened to cut Seth off financially and even take away his inheritance if he didn't break up with his girlfriend. This was no small threat, as Seth stood to inherit a significant amount of money, around $1.4 million. The pressure on Seth was building, and the tension in the family was reaching a breaking point. Then, on July 10th, 2001, everything changed. That day started off like any other. Teddy and Loiva went to work, Seth went to school, and Claudine, who was home for the holidays, stayed at the house. Seth had plans to meet up with his friend Sam later that evening. At 5 p.m., he called Sam and postponed their plans until 8 p.m. When 8 o'clock came around, Seth picked up Sam, and they went to Planet Hollywood for dinner before heading to a nearby arcade. They stayed out until about 11. At 11:45 p.m., Seth returned home. What he found inside would change everything. His father, Teddy, was lying in the foyer. His mother, Loiva, was in the living room, and his sister, Claudine, was in her bedroom. All of them had been brutally murdered. Seth immediately called the police, crying and telling them that someone had broken into the house. When police and medical personnel arrived, they found that all 3 family members had been stabbed to death. Teddy had multiple stab wounds and defensive injuries, meaning he had tried to fight off his attacker. Loiva was found with grocery bags around her, suggesting she had just come home when she was attacked. Claudine had suffered the most brutal injuries, and the scene in her bedroom was especially shocking. At first, investigators thought the crime might have been racially motivated. There was graffiti on the walls, written in blue spray paint, that appeared to contain racial slurs. Seth mentioned that the night before, the family had been involved in a road rage incident where someone had yelled racist remarks at them. Police initially believed this might be connected to the murders, but as they dug deeper into the case, things didn't add up. The house had been ransacked, but nothing of value had been taken. The family's wallets, jewelry, and other valuables were still there, The family's 5 dogs were unharmed, locked in the laundry room during the crime. Investigators also noticed something strange about the broken window in the kitchen. It had been broken from the inside, not the outside, leading police to believe the crime scene had been staged. As the investigation continued, police began to suspect that the person responsible for the murders might not have been an outsider, but someone within the family. Their attention turned to Seth. Seth's behavior in the days following the murders only raised more suspicion. Just 2 days after his family was killed, Seth went to the family's accountant and inquired about his inheritance. Most people who had just lost their entire family wouldn't be thinking about money so soon after. But Seth was. He also held a press conference where he offered a $100,000 reward for any information about the killers. Seth appeared emotional, crying in front of the cameras, but many people, including the police, felt that something was off. It seemed like his focus was more on the money than on finding justice for his family. As the investigation went on, police uncovered more troubling details about Seth's past. They found out that he had been lying about his academic performance for years. He had forged his grades, failed out of college, and was leading a double life that his parents had no idea about. Seth was also known for exaggerating and telling stories about his life. He would claim to be a model, a music producer, and even a lawyer, despite none of these things being true. Then, police got a break. They discovered that the blue spray paint used to write the racial slurs on the walls matched traces of paint found on Seth's clothing. This was a major piece of evidence, but the final nail in the coffin came when an undercover officer, posing as a friend, gained Seth's trust. Seth began to open up, and in a shocking conversation, he revealed details about the murders that only the killer would know. He even drew a sketch of the house, marking where the bodies were found, and noting the time of death for each family member. These were details that had never been made public. With this new evidence, police were certain they had their suspect. On June 13, 2002, Seth was arrested and charged with the murders of his parents and sister. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Seth pleaded not guilty. During the trial in 2004, the court heard testimony about Seth's behavior in the months leading up to the murders. It was revealed that Seth had attempted to poison his family shortly before the killings. He had ordered toxic seeds online and mixed them into his mother's food. She became seriously ill and had to be hospitalized, but she survived. When his plan to poison his family didn't work, Seth resorted to violence. The prosecution painted a picture of a young man who was under immense pressure from his parents and who saw no other way out. Seth was obsessed with material possessions, and he knew that if he killed his family, he would inherit a large sum of money. In the end, Seth was found guilty of all 3 murders and sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole. After the trial, more details about Seth's behavior emerged. It was revealed that shortly after the murders, he had pawned off his parents' cars and his mother's jewelry. He used the money to buy a luxury car, a Lexus, and even got personalized license plates in memory of his family. To many, this showed a complete lack of remorse. Seth's actions shocked the community and devastated the extended family. The once happy Gonzalez family home was sold, but it sat on the market for a long time. No one wanted to live in a house where such a horrific crime had taken place. Eventually, a family from Taiwan purchased the home, but even they acknowledged the tragedy that had occurred there. As for Seth, he remains in prison, still claiming his innocence. He has tried to appeal his conviction multiple times, but every appeal has been denied. To this day, he maintains that he had nothing to do with the murders, but few people believe him. The story of the Gonzalez family is a tragic one. It's a story of deception, betrayal, and the devastating consequences of greed. Seth's actions tore his family apart, and his lack of remorse has left many wondering how someone could do something so terrible to the people who loved him most. Given the extreme pressures Seth faced from his family and the expectations placed upon him, do you believe that external pressure alone could drive someone to commit such horrific acts? Or do you think there must be an inherent darkness within a person to take such drastic measures? How do you think society should balance the pursuit of success with the mental well-being of individuals? especially young people? Let me know in the comment down below. Thank you for joining us today. If you found this story impactful, please like the video, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe and take care.